Hey, this is Tiger. Welcome to my stream. And we're back on the West Coast Main Line Crewe to Preston DLC with the last remaining scenario that we have not finished so far, Locomotive on test. And yeah, we have to finish something that we started yesterday morning in a bit of improvisation that happened during the Saturday morning open workshop stream. You might remember that AJ suggested that we should have the locomotive talk to us like they do in Thomas the Tank Engine, and then we called the locomotive Ducky, and I started on some point narrating the whole story of how Ducky and cousin Hugo, the 47 that is at the end of our train, is going through the adventure. Ducky has had a major refurbishment. We took her out of the Crewe electric maintenance depot, and now we're taking her towards Preston, checking out all the systems, the brakes, and whether everything is working well. And in case something goes pear-shaped, we still have cousin Hugo at the end of the train who can pull us back if he sizzles her circuits or whatever. Aqua, mine actually just lurking till home. You do that. Very happy that I have you in the stream, Aqua. Yeah, and you might remember that on Saturday morning we had a crash in the game, and so I am using a clean ini file now to make the crash less likely, hopefully. And I took it upon me to drive the locomotive back to the point where we left Ducky and cousin Hugo waiting at the signal close to Wigan and waiting for the signal to clear. And this is where we just get in now. I have to try to get into the same somehow weird mood again. Here you can see her. This is cousin Hugo, the 47/3. He's already fallen asleep because we're just pulling him around his dead weight. Other locomotives are pulling trains past us, and this is why we are waiting at signal Whiskey November 77 at a red light. We have already contacted the signaler. He knows that we are there. After 5 minutes we would have to tell him again. There is no white diamond on this signal, so rule 55 applies. We have to tell him that we're here. And as soon as this train has cleared the next section, we will probably be allowed to proceed. And then we hope that we don't experience a crash again. Right, Ducky? He's already eager to go on with the journey. And driver was looking intensely at the signal, hoping that the signal would change before the 5 minutes were over and he had to go out and contact the signaler again. The circuits were cooling down. You can hear them actually ticking. And she thought, my oh my. Hopefully no more emergency brakes. That was enough strain for one day, and I have a certain tingling in my tap changer and in all the relays and thyristors. Don't even know. Don't think there are thyristors in the 86/4. In my circuits, then. I hope they did not overdo it in the refurbishment. And the next express rushed by, and the driver thought, oh, he's getting closer to the 5 minutes. I hope we don't have to go out and leave Ducky alone. Never know what she might get into her head now that she go back into liking the feeling of running around loosely on the tracks. Now that we are finally allowed to go faster than 50 miles. But nevertheless, the clock was ticking. The circuits were ticking. And the signal stayed red. For quite a while. Nobody told driver whether he had to wait for another train. And all of a sudden the signal cleared. Right, put the master switch to forward. Started to release the brakes. And nudge the top changer into the first notch. And so the game crashed again. It is a bit sad. No, I actually had a clear innie. And at this point it is crashing again. I saved it. Let's see if we actually can work with a save file here at this point. It's always a bit fidgety with the tab changer locomotives and the save games. Oh my. That does not bode well. Well, we'll see. On the other hand, this clears my conscience a bit because it was not my init tweaks that crashed the game the other day. Hey Zodigby, hello. You're just in time to witness another crash at the signal Whiskey November 77 after clearing. Maybe we just have to give it a bit more time. Maybe we have to check out another angle. Just let's hope that we get the scenario running from the save game. So that we are not forced out of the flow of the story by the game crashing. Here we are back in the game. Resume last played. Crewe Preston Locomotive on test. Did I bring bad juju? I am sure it wasn't you. Only thing that I can try is to not run the X12, but that will be annoying. So, that is a safe game now. Let's see if we can actually get the locomotive running from the safe game for the sake of the argument. I also do the initialization completely anew. So, the intermodal train again. That almost got Cousin Hugo out of his slumber. And now we have one more express train to pass. And then we have to keep the fingers crossed that we can actually get Ducky on the road again. In a way that nothing gets crashed. And then we will see where the bad juju is. At any rate, it was no coincidence that our game crashed yesterday morning. Here's the yellow signal for the express. And here it is already on the road. Maybe it can help to clear the way that we have to go with the external camera before we go there with Ducky. Maybe this way we can actually cheat the game when loading that layer that crashes it. So, give me a proceed aspect, please, so that we can try. Know what? I save it now. Spectre, Quack Quack, Tiger and Crew, nice to have you, Spectre. And we already had our first crash almost at the same point again. Now we have a proceed signal. And just let's hope that we can get the train running now without the game crashing. Not doing anything, no, just have Ducky pull the train. Aqua says, ahoy, gentle people. And we are rolling. Please don't stop routing. And well, that seems to have worked splendidly, said the driver, rubbing his hands. And Ducky was smiling silently in appreciation of a nice passing by at Wigan. Maybe actually the trick with the external camera solved it. That route is marvelous, by the way. JT did it again, the Spectre. Yes, I totally agree. I totally agree. This route is marvelous. And especially how all the outlying facilities are worked into the whole experience. And how trains go from left to right and over, under, back and forth. Not just A to B, B to A running. A lot of crisscross traffic of all kind. Only thing eased a bit the crash reliability and the performance problems, but the route in itself is splendid. Just Trains is I don't know if I can say it is by far the best third-party developer, because the Czech route is a very, 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 very nice piece of work. But they will have to prove that they can do it a second time, and Just Trains proved that they already did it a lot of times. Blackpool, Carlisle, and now Crewe Preston. Again, okay. Now we can try to get into the mood. The driver was acknowledging the AWS alarm just as the signal cleared to green, and Ducky thought, alright, so I think he will push my circuits into the highest degree, because now we can run. We are still in a, I don't know if we're still in a 50, no, we're out of it, we're in a 75 limit here. The 75 limit for passing Wigan is a go via location, and he thought we don't have to stop, we can just impress this little pacer on the right with how fast we can accelerate. And she blew her horn enthusiastically when they ran along the platforms at Wigan. Picking up speed for the way to Preston. And the driver started to relax, lean back in his seat, resting the foot firmly on the DSD pedal, and put Ducky circuits into maximum. Still, Ducky thought, Cousin Hugo is holding us back. He's sleeping at the end of the train. That's typical for him. Doing nothing. Still getting the experience and getting towed through the country. And then he's slowing everyone down because we can't run faster than 95 miles because of him. For a moment she thought whether she can calculate how much faster they will be at Preston if she could go 100 miles instead of 95, but then she thought it's not worth the effort. Don't get over enthusiastic, warned the driver. We still have one dead section until we get to Preston, and we don't want to fry your newly refurbished circuits, will we? Driver was already looking forward to passing the Leyland works because he was also a very keen lorry driver. And another intermodal train was coming from the opposite direction. With raft shaking Ducky left to right. And she thought like, maybe if I'm too old to pull passenger trains I will have to resort to freight service as well, but this is, if at all, far away in the future. I am born for running the main line with fast passenger express services. This is what I got my new circuits for. Signal is green. Acknowledge the driver. Listening joyfully to the ring of the AWS bell. Then he put Ducky's tap changer into rundown because running down the gradient the drag was enough to accelerate the train and keep the speed of 95. While they were passing this interesting building that I have so far failed to find out what it is, and then all of a sudden they got a double yellow. The driver put the tap changer into off and applied the brakes to bring down the speed to about 60 miles per hour in case they would encounter a single yellow at the next signal. That is much too early, Ducky thought. We're not even close to Preston. Why are we getting a double yellow here? Hopefully we did not catch up on this intermodal train that was passing us when we were sitting in the siding. But then the next signal was already green again. Driver overcharged the brakes a bit so that all the brake pads would go away from the wheel sets. And then he put the power handle into run up and allowed Ducky to apply power again and turn the tap changer into 85–90% to make up for some lost speed. Not overdoing it, hoping that this was enough so that the next signal would be green again. Same time they were closing in on Leyland. Cousin Hugo at the end of the train was yawning, thinking over while he was waking up from the slumber for a second. Those are the days, how I like them. Ducky doing all the work, and I can relax a bit in my old age. But unfortunately, the next signal was double yellow again. Also, they were running into a dead section, so driver had to run down the tap changer and put the controller into 0 while applying a bit of brakes to slow down to 60 miles. And still 5.3 miles to go. All this braking and shaking, thought Ducky. Can we not just stay at maximum speed so I don't need to move my tap changer all the time? With all the new wiring and circuitry, this is getting a bit stressful. But the signals were relentless, and at the next signal they got a single yellow and driver brought the speed down to about 30 so that they would be able to stop at the next signal without applying an emergency brake application. And this, when we are passing Leyland, Ducky thought, I would have loved to impress the people at Leyland, rushing past them with 95 miles per hour, and now I'm crawling here with 30. People will think all their lorries that they built at Leyland factories are faster than this locomotive. Driver was straining his eyes and saw that he didn't need to stop because the signal was yellow, or the single yellow, so that would not allow them to accelerate a lot. And the people at Leyland actually thought, wow, this is a slow locomotive passing. I wonder why they actually bothered with the electrification if they have to be that slow then. This shows how short-sighted people are. Oops. Again, driver was straining his eyes, trying to find out what the signal would be showing, but couldn't see because they had to pass the signals for the opposite direction first, and they were partially in the way. And since they were going up a little gradient, he had to notch up even a bit more. And then he saw that the signal has changed to double yellow and finally to green. And happily he put Ducky circuits back into the mid-yellow range, so that they wouldn't be that late at Preston. Again, Cousin Hugo was yawning, thinking, oh yeah, at Leyland we are, where all those lorries with their funny little diesel engines are built. And only 3 miles to Preston. Driver was thinking, does it really make sense Hugo has left the group. No, he is still here. He's just dozing, going in and out of consciousness. And Ducky thought, wow, let's accelerate a bit, even if it is only 2.6 miles. Will be interesting where they sent us at Preston. Driver said, don't overdo it. Here is the AWS magnet for the next signal, and it is double yellow. So why don't we just post in? And he put the power handle into rundown, and Ducky couldn't help but get her tap changer down to 0. That was not how she imagined it. But on the other hand, she thought, we had a nice run so far, with a lot of signals, and soon enough I will be pulling express trains up and down the line. Driver says, carefully, here's the AWS magnet for the mobile board, announcing the 35 for Preston. And Ducky thought, well, 35, that's easy. We are already down to 50. We almost do not need to brake for that. And driver said, yeah, you have to take it seriously, especially since we're getting a single yellow now. And that's what Ducky did. Because below her cocky attitude, she actually was a very sensible and reliable electric locomotive. And driver brought down the speed to 30 and even less, because the next signal will probably be the home signal for Preston, and everybody knows that this is an approach controlled one. Where the trigger is still in front of the AWS magnet, and you need to be slow enough so that the signal clears, and that's what the signal did. It cleared to double yellow, what would bring them into Preston, and they were scheduled to stop at platform 4. Driver, knowing that when running through the switches he will probably keep the speed below 30. Look at all those hopper cars, the driver told Ducky, and the flatbeds, because he used to run freight trains before he got to drive the express. And Ducky thought, yeah, well, leave me alone with those cars. I want to pull nice coaches with passengers, not those dirty freight cars that sometimes don't even have brakes. And they were crossing the River Ribble on their way into Preston Station. Driver put the power brake handle into run down and then cut off the power while they were passing the AWS magnet for the last signal before they would get to their scheduled stopping position at platform 4, Preston. Ducky likes the down line. Down fast, up fast. Don't you want to honk at those guys working next to the track? She asked the driver, and driver says, yeah, okay. We can honk at them. And so they worked slowly and almost too slowly, coasting into Preston platform 4. So the driver even had to apply some more power, because for whatever reason they weren't really coasting freely. Maybe Hugo, in his dizziness, had kept some air in his brake cylinders. Train is definitely trying to slow down. And there was already the station foreman in the archetypical station foreman hairdo, but with a different coat. The Class 47 will be dragging this formation back to Crewe. So, Ducky, that was a nice run, but now Cousin Hugo has to get us back to Crewe. Turn off the headlights and the marker lights. And Ducky says, well, we could run around and I can take back the train to Crewe. And driver said, well, we have to obey the orders. And put the left tail light on. Put the brakes into shutdown. First an emergency, obviously. Waiting for the brake pipe to clear and then into shutdown. Master switch to off. The pantograph button down. And Ducky thought, well, my nice pantograph. Where am I getting my electricity now? But she obeyed and got her pantograph down. Set the master switch to off. And even the AWS, and Ducky thought, well, I can actually live quite well without the AWS. This is annoying thing anyway. Oh. That means, yes, it is here on this end. Driver tripped the DSD so that Ducky would not slow them down via the DSD. And then stepped out, uncrunched, locked the door, and went to the foreman, who was waiting for them already quite some time. So long that he developed a light blue circle. Oh, I'm sorry, you actually have a very different hairdo than the other one. The driver to take them is missing. Could you help us out? Yeah, of course, I'm happy to help, said driver, because he knew that the other option would cost him his career. Start the Class 47 and get ready for the signal to change. You'll have less priority than passenger services, so expect to wait in loops. Yeah, and so the driver walked to the rear end of the train to wake up Cousin Hugo.
Preston, which is ready to leave.
He hoped there would be a stand where he can, a kiosk or wherever, where he can buy a coffee. But even though there was a sign, it was not on the way. So he arrived at Hugo, looking at the coffee shop longingly, but then decided to do his duty. He said, "Okay, Hugo, old boy, it's us for the way back now." Set the AWS. Unisolate the VSD. Engine is off. And the alarm is on because we have an empty brake pipe. Master key to on. Then he put the reverser into engine only and pressed the engine start button. And Hugo, who was very relaxed after sleeping all the way to Preston, started his engine easily. The driver put the straight brake to 100% so that the train would be held by it, and then the driver's brake to running. Alarm light is off. The engine stopped is off as well, and then the driver was ordered to put the reverser to forward. We're actually not getting any passengers because this is a test run. We cannot have passengers in a test run. The driver explained to Hugo, who couldn't care less, and they switched the light formation. The driver stood up, checked that the lights were working, got in again, closed the door properly, sat down, yawned a bit, rubbed his hand, contacted the signaler, and says, "Yes, up fast." So we're going on the fast line first. Alright. Let's go. He said to Hugo, blowing the horn, and the horn woke Hugo out of his slumber now completely, and he thought, alright. Now let's show this little girl at the end of the train how a real engine pulls this train. And driver, being cautious, saved the game in case it would crash again. Going out of Preston 4 allows us to go to 35 until we are on the line. At least that's what I thought. Yes. We're already past the 30 gap here. So Ducky at the end of the train thought, well, I can't run the service, so the best thing I can do is just enjoy the scenery and let Hugo do the work. That's what we brought him along in the first place. And while they were crossing the River Ribble, driver put the throttle handle into higher gears until he got into full, and Hugo applied all his power from his diesel engine, and with a loud rattling, the train set out home. Towards Crewe. The next point is go via location Acton Bridge up slow. So there is a lot of distance to cover. We have to pass Wigan, we have to pass Warrington, and then the junction where the trains from Liverpool are coming in. So the driver leaned back, patted the dashboard and says, "Okay, old boy, get yourself ready for a long haul." Let's hope we're not getting too many adverse signals. Foreman said we don't have priority, but let's hope there aren't too many higher prioritized trains on the track tonight or this morning. And Cousin Hugo, with all his routine, was prattling on. Getting his valves on temperature. And accelerating beyond the 50 miles per hour, while at the end of the train Ducky was thinking 50 miles per hour, and he's already breathing like an old cart horse. You should have seen me accelerating beyond the 50. But he didn't, because he was sleeping. But actually Hugo had seen it, was a bit impressed, but thought it won't do to tell her, because he already thinks much too highly of herself. And so they were passing the Leyland Motorworks again with their 5 chimneys. And soon they were to pass Leyland Station, while Hugo slowly Oh no, see, the radar was annoyed that every break it was only played in Britain, but his opinion wasn't important, so he just made a fool of himself again. You did not make a fool of yourself, obviously, but now I had to finish it. And we will be in different countries soon enough. Nice to have you on the chat though. What the hell, Twitch? That was supposed to be a secret, he said. A secret? On Twitch? Such things do not exist. My friend, we will most likely have more German stuff soon. Going by the roadmap, maybe finally even Japanese stuff. If I feel like it, we can have some American stuff. with the GP60 that we have not really played. Though there is much content incoming that is not British content. But I have to admit, this DLC here got me really hooked. And Hugo thought, we are running through a neutral section, girly at the end, and it did not faze me at all. I did not have to take away power. And I'm still accelerating towards the 70. And Ducky thought, yeah, even with the power taken away, I would have been already much faster. And while the sun was going to its highest point at the midday, the light was changing and Hugo was pulling the train past the next intermodal train. And CD Raiders is of course very enthusiastic about any topic because he loves this community. Purple art. This is very nice of you. Yeah, and I'm really happy that you guys are enjoying this a bit nonsense-like stream with Ducky and Cousin Hugo, the emergency brakes, and all is well that ends die-sel. Yeah, all is well that ends die-sel, Ducky thought. Let's see where this ends. I have a feeling that it will be the end of diesel anyway, quite soon, with the electrification going on and everything. That's what Ducky thought in 1980, not knowing that in 2026 there were still a lot of British diesel trains running around. And CD Raider wants to sell Ducky for scrap. No! He said, I won't be sold. Not for scrap and not for anything else. And Hugo actually had to let go a bit with his endeavors to accelerate, because up the hill he had to admit he was not a spring chicken anymore. So pulling the train with more than 65 uphill was actually a bit beyond him. And driver said, don't worry Hugo, you can do it. Steadily does it. And so Hugo prattled on. Driver secretly saving every couple of miles in case the game would crash again. At least he does not have to slow down for the 75 at Wigan, thought Ducky. If he can't pull the train faster than 65. So he does not need to bother with remembering those things. Driver thought this might be a good time to test the brakes. And Hugo thought, what the heck was he thinking of? But everything worked as it was supposed to. And while they were going down the hill, Hugo was actually able to get close to the 70. Actually today I was at the Susa City ready to say goodbye to a tiger who will soon be leaving to Britain, and maybe I will go visit him there. Oh, that is so sweet of you. When you talk about the zoo, I always imagine you visiting the wolves. Didn't know that you would also go see a tiger. And now the tiger is going to Britain. And all of a sudden, running downhill, Hugo was at the 75 and the driver was... Well, I let him accelerate beyond the 75, even though we will have to slow down soon anyway. After the next signal there will probably be already the Morpeth board announcing the drop to 75. But he thought like, well, let him just coast and take away the power so that he can pull his conductors a bit. And that's what Hugo did. Hugo is the boss, says the Spectre. And they encountered the Morpeth board warning them about the drop to 75 at Wigan. And Hugo, being the boss that he was, just let the speed drop easily without any brake effort to 75 and coasted on. Silently running like a submarine into Wigan. Driver thought, well, can't hurt to keep a bit of a safety margin, and had Hugo drop the speed even 1 or 2 clicks more. 75 board. Driver thinking, if I was a Japanese driver I would point at the board saying 75 miles per hour. Check. And they were closing into Wigan. Driver put the hand on the horn. And the people at Wigan were impressed that an old 47 like Hugo was able to pull the train at that speed. And Ducky thought, they should have seen me if I had been allowed. You can do that soon with Tadami line. Point at the board and speak it out in Japanese, that is. Yeah, well, if I feel like getting blasted for speaking bad Japanese, I can do that. Let's hope that we actually get the Tadami line, as it is announced on the roadmap and has been announced on the roadmap for so long already. Okay, Hugo, the driver said. if you have a little bit left and you can try to accelerate the train beyond the 75. And Hugo thought, yeah, he always does that when we are running uphill. Nevertheless, he did his best to take the momentum up the hill and over the grade. It's only a flyover anyway, the driver told Hugo. And Hugo said, well, it does not matter whether it's a flyover, a ramp or a mountain. Going uphill is always a strain. And obviously he was right. Those sounds are not good because they sometimes indicate that the game might want to crash. So the driver saved it, just in case. And they were approaching the junctions. Around Eelstown, where they would have to slow down to 80. Slow down to 80, thought Ducky. Nonsense. He can't do 80 on a straight line anyway. But then he thought, why am I so critical? He's actually a nice guy, Cousin Hugo. It's not his fault that he has to produce his own electricity. And can't get it out of the overhead catenary. And thus reinstated, who would put even more. Because even though he sometimes showed a bit of a cavalier attitude towards his duties, he did not want to be seen as someone who was remiss in his duties. And so he pulled the train on, checking that he was not faster than 80 when they approached the junction here. Driving, taking the power away a bit, pointing at the sign 90, and even though there is no sign to tell us there is 80. There's only the small one in the middle. And the one indicating the speed for the branch off. 80, check. Running over the junction. And the speed increased to 100 again. So driver and Hugo actually agreed that there is not much point in doing anything. Just have the train coast. Because they would have to slow down to 80 anyway at the end of this straight. Passing the dead section. Being happy that the signals were green. Seeing this bridge, driver prepared to bring the speed down to 80 again. Hello, my friend. Hello, my friend. Hello, my friend. Thought Ducky. Greeting enthusiastically every electric locomotive that they encountered. Driver brought the speed down to 80 before they were passing the most bumpy football pitch in the county and then reuniting with the line from Eelstown. Applying a bit more brakes since the train was still accelerating. Not going into the slow line. Staying on up fast. So they did not have to slow down to 50. But both knew, the driver and Hugo, from long experience, that they would have to slow down to 75 when they got closer to Warrington, and so they just had the train coast and let the train take the strain. Ducky thought, yeah, let the train take the strain. For me it's always my buffers have to take the strain. And the driver and Hugo looked at each other and said, well, she will relax and she will learn. Driver applying the brakes a bit to bring the speed down to 75 while they were approaching Warrington on green signals. Driver looking out for the 75 sign. That was an oldish version and should appear right here after the crossover, and here it actually was. Close down to the ground, and they prepared for the passage of Warrington. Driver reminded Hugo that the 75 ends already here, goes back to 90, and as soon as the train will have passed the sign, they can accelerate again. Driver thinking, why did I have the throttle on while I was braking? I must have been sleeping. And Hugo thought, yeah, now you realize it. I thought some power braking was the latest bit that they taught you in driver's school. But still he did his best. To impress the people at Warrington, who did not really take notice of him. And he was collecting his strength to pull the train up the ramp towards the bridge. Not that one, but the next. Die-sel power. Would you like a cup of tea? Should we send some help? A cup of tea would actually go down nicely. But we will have to get this train home. And driver thought, well, I was denied my coffee and tea break. So they need to cut me some slack. Thinking, oh, me being a British train driver wouldn't use expressions like this. But it's a new world that we're living in. And they passed the bridge over whatever river this might be. Is that Medway? I don't know. Should have looked it up on the map. Medway? No, not Medway. Mersey. Obviously, I was thinking of Mersey. The Medway Valley lines got my head confused. The only DLC featuring a rainbow. But neither Ducky nor Cousin Hugo. And driver thought, well, so far we actually got the fast line all the time. And Ducky thought, well, this is the part of the line where I would have been up to 100 miles per hour in a couple of seconds, and he is still nibbling at the 80. He just couldn't help. But you have to be easy on her. Coming out of the electric maintenance depot with newly refurbished circuits, and then they had to be pulled by Hugo. If it's a cousin, who is their uncle? Do they have the same great parents? The grandfather, the Flying Scotsman. Well, maybe I can draw up a family tree sometime. In Germany you have the concept of a Nennonkel. Does this concept exist in Czech as well? That is a person who is close to a family but not really related. But that's not what I wanted to say. But they only call him an uncle. Well, they only call him Cousin Hugo. And Hugo was actually struggling on the gradient here. He would not easily admit it, but his ego was a bit hurt that he actually was so much slower than Ducky with this heavy train, and Ducky sitting at the end. At least I don't have to power down for the neutral section, he consoled himself. While they were passing the junction where the trains from Liverpool were coming in. Again, they were allowed to stay on the fast line and did not have to switch over to slow. And they were closing in on Acton Bridge. And now they got flashing yellows. And this is a niggle for this route. The flashing animations are not really good. Driver cut the power, waited for the amps fall to 100, then cut it off, and then applied some brakes. While they were running across the beautiful aqueduct. Again, the game was doing weird things. Single yellow. That means the next one is a junction signal with a yellow aspect. And we have to go into the slow lane now, probably. Driver checked the timetable and learned that he would be required to slow down the train to 40 on the switch. Uncle Herbert, says Akura, the world class 35 with the leakage. I actually used to have an Uncle Herbert. But he died years ago already. Don't know whether he had a leakage or not. So, old boy, said the driver, finally the junction signal for you. And who should quit smoking? Yeah? Get all the tar out of his exhausters. And since the junction signal was a yellow one, even though they were allowed to go before they could see the signal, they had to slow down the train a bit in case they were required to stop. Driver putting the brakes in overcharge to release the brakes, even with Ducky at the end. Yeah, I know, I can release my brakes myself, thank you very much. And then cautiously applied more power to get the train back up to speed. Now on the slow line, confined to 40. And Hugo thought, well, at least now I don't have to worry that I can't bring the train up to line speed anymore. And the driver saved, just in case. "14 miles to Crewe, and this is the next objective." Well, yeah, Spectre, you're obviously right, Hugo should quit smoking, but it's actually an improvement. And so I had my first spat this year, CD Raider. Because I was preparing a joke about Hugo actually not being able to quit smoking, at least turned to filter. I forgot that we were running under caution. And that we would have to treat the next signal as being red, as it actually is. Oh, it's not just me running a red signal, yes. I actually made it into month 7 until the first spat. But here we go. An inconspicuous little signal at the bridge between Acton Bridge and Hartford marks the first spat of the year. There's no telephone. Apparently there is no telephone. If there is no telephone, then I cannot contact the signaler. And no DRA, yes. This is why I love the 1980s so much, because there's no DRA on the trains. Well, then we have to use the in-game contact. The signaler, the witch. And finally, Ducky had made her peace. Windows still open. Actually, it should not happen. Driver forgot it because he thought he was going to his break anyway. He thought like, well, actually it's quite nice to be pulled around. Let the cousin do the work. On the way back I can cool my circuits. And I think I will have to pull enough extra strains in my life so I can relax as long as it is possible. I wonder what train is going to overtake us here. Keep playing ping pong, right? Can hear it ping pong. Tick, tick, tick. Stupid question, but if Ducky and Hugo can think and talk, why can they not drive themselves? Well, this is the oldest question from the Thomas universe that actually exists. And it is an interesting collaboration between drivers and locomotives. Here they go. And we have a signal. And, well, I would describe it a bit like horses and riders, right? Obviously, horses can run for themselves. They don't need the riders. But sometimes they need their riders to plan ahead and to deal with things that they wouldn't deal with if they were on their own. And I guess it's a bit like this, the driver and the locomotive in this context universe. The only thing that the locos can do on their own apparently is use the whistle. So now I mustn't make the same mistake again. We only got a yellow. So we need to approach the next signal with caution. Even if this means going very slowly. But now we can see that the junction signal is green. We have to check, we have to slow down to 30 when we're getting out of the slow line into the fast line. But that means, Hugo, old boy, you can strain yourself a bit. See, if you apply yourself a bit, you can actually make some decent acceleration. But there's no point in going faster than 40 before we are out of the siding, Hugo thought. And cut down the governor. So they switched over to the fast line. The driver was looking out of the window to see whether Ducky makes it. And as soon as Ducky was through the siding, he had Hugo applied a bit more power. And so they were approaching Hartford. Hartford. Obviously not Hartford, Connecticut. And also not Hartford in Hertfordshire. But Hartford in... Well, actually no, Cheshire maybe. And then there was only one line and they couldn't go on the slow line anymore, and Hugo had to apply himself so that they would not occupy the line for too long and slow down the express trains. And so they tackled the last 10 miles. And Hugo had the train accelerated to almost 70. Windsport signaling box they passed, and Hugo thought, well, that's good. It's the last station before we get to Crewe. Then I can finally rest my wheel sets. But they still had to pass Winsford station. And all of a sudden, they had 4 tracks again, but were allowed to stay on the up fast. And the signals thankfully stayed green. What does Ducky think about NPCs with down jackets? With down jackets in Trains in the World. What do you think about it, Ducky? But she rather wouldn't say. driver did not think that it would actually do her a lot of good to explain to her what a down checker was. "5 miles finally," thought Hugo. "Now that I got the train to up to speed, we're almost there." That was Trevor in the field, right? "Alright," said Ducky. Actually, he did a good job bringing us back. And Cousin Hugo thought, well, there will be a time when we shall be retired, but until then, they can't really do without us diesels. So there will be enough room for both of us on the tracks. Even though one of us might have to go to the slow line, Ducky thought, but didn't say. And the driver thought, well, 3 miles. Soon enough I will have to slow down this train, so I can bring down the power gradually. And have the train coast home. And that's what he did. And Hugo happily shut down his prime mover into idle and felt the strain go through his bogies. And the next signal they encountered was a double yellow, and the driver applied some brakes to bring the speed down to about 50 or 60. Going into Crewe, they remembered, involves a slowdown to 80 and then a slowdown to 20 at any rate, regardless of what platform we're going to. We're going to the more outlying platforms, then it might be even as slow as 15. We will see where they sent us. Next signal will most probably be single yellow, and it was already coming in. So the driver took away even more speed. Thinking sometimes that the DSD does not work properly, especially not if you're doing it in a lag. And then they were leaning nicely towards the 20, a bit early still. But since they had to go past an approach control signal most probably, that was just okay. And the approach control signal switched. telling them to take the train. Actually to 1, is that right? Yes, crew platform 1. Could have looked at the objective marker. But obviously Hugo, Ducky and the driver can't see the objective marker. That probably means that we have to slow down even more. If we're going to platform 1, oh, maybe 20 is enough. And while the weather looked like it was going to take a turn for the worse, they finally approached Preston Station again. Preston. I say Crewe Station, obviously. Crewe North Junction. With the name being too long for the sign. Is it really that we can go with 20 ammo, right? Yes, seems to be. Alright, and here they were. Rolling into Crewe Station. Fly my pistons, who thought, here we are, finally. And the driver was shutting down the cab. Setting the tail light. Setting the reverser to off. Set the driver's brake to shut down. First in emergency until the brake pipe is empty, then you can go pulling the brake pin into emergency, set the master key to off. AWS. Thank you for agreeing to bring the formation back to Crewe. The signalers are pleased that a platform at Preston wasn't blocked. Very nice. And that's it. Zizzle my circuit stuck, I thought I can get the last shot of this scenario, but she couldn't. And now off to a nice Chinese restaurant for some Peking duck, for some noodles. Well, that's a nice thing if you're a dog made out of iron and copper. You maybe don't really feel so bad about the poor birds ending up in the soup. Thanks, guys, for watching. That was bringing out the bringing out or getting this idea to an end that AJ brought up yesterday in the morning, that the locals should talk like with Thomas characters. So I hope you enjoyed this scenario. It is actually a beautiful scenario, even without Ducky and Cousin Hugo. I hope it didn't ruin it for you. And Nakoras has got the recently got the DLC, tried the code Tiger 15, didn't work, still happy with purchase. Yeah. Thank you so much for trying, but there is no partnership code. I'm not earning anything from the sales of the DLCs that I, well, cover here in my streams or that I play with. I'm happy that I get them as an ambassador, and I like to tell you what I like and what I don't like, but I'm not earning anything with this. Thank you for the stream. See you next time, Spectre. Same to you, and I know, Sakura. Always have to repeat it in case anyone thinks that we are ambassador actually getting paid or getting anything from the sales. It's totally not the case. At least I'm not getting anything from it. I don't think that any colleague is getting anything from it. Only thing that we earn is the little money that we get from Twitch or YouTube, and obviously the DLCs for free. And it's always fun for me actually to be part of this community, and sometimes get one or two glances or glimpses behind the curtains to see what's happening there. All right, now we put Ducky and Hugo to sleep, and next time we're probably back to doing some serious train simulation. Akku says, es sei dir gegönnt. See you next time, guys. See you guys. Thank you. Bye bye.